The heat wave arrived quietly, without sirens or announcements, the way real disasters often do. One morning felt only slightly warmer than the last, but by noon the city seemed to hold its breath. The sun hung low and merciless, bleaching color from buildings and turning sidewalks into slow-burning plates. Asphalt softened underfoot. The air felt thick, almost chewable, like every breath demanded effort in return. Inside cramped apartments, fans hummed uselessly, pushing hot air in lazy circles. Windows stayed open, but nothing moved outside. Not a breeze, not a bird. Even the city's usual noise felt exhausted. Car horns were fewer. Voices were lower. People conserved energy the way they conserved water. Heat wasn't just uncomfortable. It was invasive, settling into bones, creeping into thoughts, making patience fragile and tempers short. Ayaan waited at a bus stop where the digital sign flickered and died, another victim of the strain on the power grid. Sweat gathered at his temples and slid down his neck, soaking into his collar. Around him, strangers stood spaced apart, not out of politeness but instinct. No one wanted to feel another body's heat. An older woman clutched a plastic bottle with 2 inches of water left, her fingers wrapped around it like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. A delivery driver leaned against a pole, eyes closed, chest rising too fast. News alerts buzzed on phones, record-breaking temperatures, emergency advisories, cooling centers opening in schools and malls. It all sounded distant, almost unreal, like something happening somewhere else. But the heat made everything personal. It pressed on memories, on worries, on fears people usually kept buried under routine. Ayaan thought about his family at home, about bills, about how fragile normal life suddenly felt. The bus finally came, its doors opening with a tired hiss. Hot air poured out instead of relief. As Ayaan stepped inside, he realized something unsettling. The heat wave wasn't just weather. It was a mirror, exposing how quickly comfort vanished and how unprepared the city was for silence, slowness, and shared suffering. In that moment, standing shoulder to shoulder with strangers who looked just as worn, Ayaan understood this was only the beginning. By the third day, the heat had stopped feeling temporary. It settled in like an unwanted guest who showed no signs of leaving. Rolling blackouts swept through neighborhoods, stealing the small comfort of air conditioners and fans. Nights were worse than afternoons. Without the sun to blame, the heat felt personal, as if it was coming from inside the walls themselves. People lay awake on sweat-soaked sheets, counting minutes instead of hours. At home, Ayaan watched his younger sister breathe in shallow bursts, her skin hot to the touch. Their mother kept pressing a damp cloth to her forehead, whispering reassurances she didn't fully believe. Hospitals were overwhelmed, news anchors said, emergency rooms packed with dehydration cases and heat stroke victims. The words sounded clinical, but the fear in the room was raw and immediate. Every cough, every restless movement felt like a warning. Outside, the city moved in survival mode. Stores ran out of bottled water by noon. Ice became more valuable than snacks. Sirens cut through the heavy air, slow and constant, like a heartbeat the city couldn't ignore. Ayaan stepped onto the sidewalk with a clay pot, an old one his grandmother once used, filling it with tap water that barely ran. He placed it near the entrance of their building and taped a piece of paper to the wall. Free water. Please take. At first, people hesitated. Then one man stopped, took a cup, and drank like he'd been holding his breath for days. A woman followed, then a teenager, then a delivery rider whose hands shook as he poured. Some nodded in thanks. Others couldn't speak at all. One man sat down on the curb and cried quietly, water dripping from his chin as he whispered that his wife was sick, and he didn't know what to do. In that unbearable heat, Ayaan felt something shift. The city wasn't just suffering, it was connecting in small, fragile ways. Kindness didn't fix the heat wave. It didn't lower the temperature or bring back the power. But it cooled something else. Fear, loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. As the sun burned on, Ayaan stayed beside the clay pot, refilling it again and again, realizing that sometimes survival began with the simplest act. Sharing what little you had. On the seventh morning, the heat felt different. Not weaker, just restless, as if the city itself was waiting for something to change. The sky had lost its harsh blue and turned a dull, uncertain gray. People stepped outside more often, not for relief, but for reassurance, scanning the horizon the way farmers once did. The air still clung to skin, but there was a pause in its cruelty, a fragile silence between extremes. Ayaan stood by the window, watching the street below. The clay pot was still there, cracked now, its rim chipped from constant use. Neighbors passed it like a quiet landmark, something familiar that had outlasted the worst days. His sister slept at last, exhaustion pulling her into a deeper rest. The sound of her steady breathing felt like a victory no headline would ever report. Then it happened. A single drop hit the pavement, sharp and loud, darkening the dust instantly. Another followed. People froze, unsure whether to trust it. When the rain finally came, it wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no wild wind, just a steady fall, cool and honest. Steam rose from the streets. The smell of wet earth spread fast, rich and grounding. Doors opened. Someone laughed out loud. A woman held her hands out, palms up, eyes closed. Ayaan stepped outside as the rain soaked his shirt, washing away layers of sweat and fatigue. He felt lighter, not because the heat was gone, but because the waiting was over. For the first time in days, the city allowed itself to feel something other than endurance. The rain didn't erase what the heat wave had taken. It didn't bring back those who didn't make it through the nights or undo the fear that lingered in quiet rooms. But it softened the edges. It reminded people that suffering wasn't permanent, even when it felt endless. Ayaan refilled the clay pot one last time, this time with rainwater. He didn't put the sign back up. He didn't need to. People knew what it meant now. As the rain continued, he realized the heat wave had left behind more than damage. It left awareness, connection, and the memory of strangers who chose to care when it was hardest. When the clouds finally began to break, sunlight returned gently, not as an enemy, but as a promise. The city breathed again, slowly, cautiously, carrying forward the quiet lesson the heat had burned into everyone's hearts.